Who has a love affair with the German soldier at the time of the occupation of France, and who, for this reason, has her hair shaved off by so-called French resistors. And this during the days of what we call in France the liberation. So, on the occasion of the meeting, of the encounter in Hiroshima, and this 14 years after the destruction of the city, of the encounter between this woman with a young Japanese architect whose family has died from the atomic explosion. On this occasion, the memories of these two disasters are like woven together. The woman, who is an actress, as you saw, has come to Hiroshima for playing in a pacifist film on the destruction of the city, and the architect lives there in Hiroshima, where he is born. So they meet, rather than met, they meet, they talk together, they fall in love, both of them being survivors of the disasters they have been respectively the victims of. To some extent, of course, the two events are incomparable, or they cannot be put on the same level. It is not only that they don't take place on the same front of the war, one takes place on the west and one on the east, but it is before all that their scales of these events are so different. The scale of the individual, the scale of private life, of intimate feelings, the scale of closed space, the cellar, where the girl's parents lock her up as she's beside herself with sorrow and pain. That's on one hand. And on the other hand, the level of the mass, of massive terror, of history with capital, of politics, and the devastating open space of Hiroshima. On one hand, the infamous head shaving of the young woman, which is a turn, which is a collapse in her personal life, but also the way through which she becomes an adult, the dramatic way. She becomes an adult, for after that she leaves her parents, she leaves the small city of Nevers, she becomes autonomous, has her own life in Paris. And this after having almost succumbed to pain and become mad. And on the other hand, it's what's presented, of course, it's a turn in history, the capitulation of Japan after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the beginning of the age of nuclear war as a permanent possibility. So we have two bifurcations, one which is molecular, let's say, and the other one which is epoch-making. And these two bifurcations in the two personal lives, which are presented in the film, the woman's and the man's, they intersect, they meet in Hiroshima, and this just by chance, more than 10 years after the two original events took place, with, let's say, 1 year gap for France, as we see in the film, is liberated during the summer of 1944. Hiroshima is bombed 1 year after. Okay. So now, to go to the main topic. The very strange thing in the film, or about the story of the film, is that it takes place in Hiroshima, which is the location of the total disaster. But actually, what is worked out there in Hiroshima, and what is presented gradually, what is unfolded progressively, it is her, the woman's trauma, as she finds in Japan, that is so far from home, from Paris, from France, something like a favorable ground for speaking for the first time about herself and letting the memory of the tragic events come up again, come back up to the surface of the film. It is she who finds an ear to listen to her. She who finds a man who helps her to summon the dramatic past and to become liberated from it. And by contrast, nothing of that kind happens on or from the man's side, the Japanese architect's side. We just hear, he says, just by passing, that his whole family has perished under the bomb. And it is, of course, too, dramatic event, personal event, of course, dramatic and traumatic. But actually, the same process of remembering, recalling in pain and sorrow, this process does not happen on or from his side. So he is her witness, and he delivers or helps her to deliver a wounded memory. But what about him? Is his memory not wounded too? The only thing that reminds us that his life is rooted in the apocalyptic past, that is in the destruction of Hiroshima, is the sentence he addresses her several times, and this in a very assertive tone. Tu n'as rien vu à Hiroshima. You have not seen anything in Hiroshima. This sentence which reminds us that he, as a witness of the disaster, that is a witness which is indirect because he was at war at that time, he was not in Hiroshima, but direct too because his family has been killed, of course. He knows pretty well that 10 years after, a bit more, the reconstruction of the city makes it impossible for her as a tourist, as a foreign visitor, even concerned as she is, even committed to the cause of peace and anti-atomic mobilization, the state of the film. It's impossible for her, as what she is, to imagine, to figure out what the event Hiroshima has been. It is impossible for her to be, in spite of all her goodwill, a real witness of that past. As she says, she has seen everything. She has seen everything. So she thinks that she knows everything about the destruction of the city. But he, the Japanese architect, he knows and this from a completely different and much more solid knowledge, because it's rooted in his own experience of the disaster. He knows that she cannot have seen anything odd. And this is, let's say, in this discussion that plays in the film, a classic and very beautifully staged example of what I already talked about, that is different in the sense of the part of misunderstanding, mésentente, in the sense of pensée. It's very simple. They do not agree on the meaning of the word to see, what it is to see. So we have to be attentive to this very strange asymmetry between the two main characters, the woman and the man in the film. A very obvious privilege is granted to the female side, which is also the French, that is the Western side. But still, it is a film on Hiroshima and not on Navarre, as the title reminds us. So this kind of twist is both it's a very enigmatic and fascinating trait of the film. And I just mentioned it by passing, for me, in terms of reception, let's say. I never took notice of this discrepancy as I saw the film again and again. As I was in France, as I worked on the film, I studied the film for different research reasons. But as I saw it again here, just for preparing this course here in Taiwan, this discrepancy became immediately obvious for me. So anyway, we will not know anything in the film about his own moral pain, about the impossible mourning from his side for his relatives who have been killed by the bomb. We will not know anything about his own sufferings as he was a soldier in the Pacific, or maybe in mainland China. According to the narrative logic of the film, his own position as a victim and as a witness of horror fades away in comparison with what springs up and actually is at the core of the film, that is the traumatic scene in Navarre. This scene that took place on, let's say, the sidelines of history, this scene comes back in the present as some kind of a substitute, I would say, the place of the real scene, which is the atomic destruction of Hiroshima. So why? Why? Is it that it is too early, 10 years or more after the disaster, to summon this scene, the destruction of Hiroshima, into the present? Or is it that it is of such a scale, this disaster or this crime, of such an horror, that it cannot be recalled, and this under any kind of circumstances? So we already talked about that, about Kurosawa, as we spoke about Kurosawa's film. Perhaps you know this. Okay, the time of the molecular apocalypse in Navarre and the time of the global, the total apocalypse in Hiroshima, these two times become, in René's film, inseparable. The two events interlace as they meet through the lovers' encounter and their growing mutual passion. But by contrast, with Navarre's lost time, I refer here, of course, to the work of Marcel Proust. which actually in the duration of the dialectic of the film transforms itself into recovered time, the temps retrouvé at the end of the film. By contrast with this, the time of Hiroshima as a disaster is not restored. It cannot be restored. It cannot return or come back. It is, to be sure, awakened. This past is awakened by the encounter of the French woman and the Japanese man, but it cannot surface in the present, as it is, let's say, called or invoked. The right takes the form of a very labored reconstitution, that is, the Pacific demonstration, but for the purpose of a film shooting. So nothing, absolutely nothing happens, by contrast with the very intense moments as the memory of the past never even erupt in the present. The lovers force their way, in the scene of the demonstration, they have to force their way against the stream of the demonstration as if they were completely alien to what the object or the occasion of this film shooting is. Another effect of the wrong alignment of both events, but also the wrong alignment of both witnesses too, is this. Hiroshima as an event remains inaccessible to the woman. Even if she protests that she has visited the museum 4 times, we have to agree with him, with the Japanese character. She has not seen anything in Hiroshima. And we notice that the closer she tries to come to it, the more this memory or this object moves away from her, slips between her fingers. For, as I already said, she's just a tourist. She's just passing, coming past Hiroshima and leaving the next morning. But as for him, in his relation to her event, what happened in Melun, it's completely different. For we see that as he listens to her story, he gets right inside the dead German soldier's character. He becomes the soldier, the dead soldier who has been killed in Melun. He becomes like her secret's only caretaker. And he's very happy about this. Actually, the parallel or the mirror effect between the two stories, between the two events, is misleading. The many signs which provide a link between the two events, the two names of the cities, Nevers and Hiroshima, many signs like women who lose their hair in Hiroshima, to the season that is, and summer days, end of the war, etc. All these signs are actually deceptive. The cure, kind of cure from the devastating past, is one-sided. Very clearly, she is, let's say, the patient, and he is a very, let's say, a very special kind of therapist. Very special because he's a lover and he should not be if he's a therapist. But this is also the reason why he can only be a passerby in her life. The reason why they do not have any common future. He has to be himself a survivor, from a witness of the apocalypse. He has to be this, a survivor in order to be able to act as, let's say, the ferryman between past and present, to help her to go upstream in her life. He's just the ferryman who helps her to overcome oblivion, to go through the river, to overcome oblivion. And this, he can do it because he's the man from Hiroshima. He is Hiroshima, as she says at the end of the film. For the strange thing in the film is that Hiroshima is actually just some kind of a scenery for a film, and for her, the right place for this bit weird analytic cure. The original, or the originating scene, which has to be unveiled or rediscovered, which is dug up, is that of the persecution of a young woman in Nevada. It is not the atomic leveling of Hiroshima. And this is, of course, the point where the narrative logic in this film might become somehow uncanny. Because this is the point where Hiroshima is an empty place. As he repeats, there's nothing to see for you. Which happens to be the vacant scenery where a provincial French drama can be re-staged. This is the paradox of the film. From the reverse angle, of course, we could say, if we take the reverse angle, we can say as well that what René and Marguerite Duras, who wrote, the writer Marguerite Duras, who wrote the screenplay of the film, that we can say that what they superbly stage, it is, of course, the destruction of the destruction. That is the post-catastrophic Hiroshima with its new buildings, lights, busy crowd during the day, empty streets at night, bleak bars and nightclubs. A reconstruction that makes the present of the city look like a very thin layer of life, just like provisional, artificial, and very fragile. The life after that gets organized amid the invisible ashes, which is an apparently very normal life. This life after seems artificial. It looks like a film on location, too normal. Even the architect's house, where he lives with his family, with his wife, his indoor comfort, all this looks a bit unreal. For such places are haunted by the memory of the catastrophe. But the witness, the architect, can only keep silent on all this. And this is why, because he's so silent on this is why, as a counterpart, he's available to placing himself or adopting the French woman's personal disaster and becoming the double of the dead German soldier. So, of course, saying that Hiroshima Mon Amour is a film about memory, this is to state the obvious. But what we have to notice is how René and Duras pass from memory as topic, that's a general topic, to a narration which has to go through all kinds of subliminal pictures. That is non-explicit, non-symbolic, non-illustrating images, but rather pictures which immerse us, as the audience, in memory, as a milieu or as a rim. The 7 branches of the river Ota, which flows through Hiroshima, or the beautiful river Loire, which runs past Nevers. they become an allegory of memory. Or as well, at the beginning of the film, the skin of the lovers in close-up, which appears as if it were covered with a film of ashes. And this is what has been epoch-making at the time of the Nouvelle Vague in René's film. That is this complex, non-linear narration, which is made not only of flashbacks. This had, of course, already been done in the history of cinema, but I would rather say passages in the sense of Benjamin, and correspondences between past and present. Japan and France, a war front and another, a woman's life and a man's fate, etc. This kind of labyrinthine narrative construction was something at that time unprecedented in French cinema, so in the 60s. And this is why this film has been immediately celebrated as a masterpiece. Okay, it is also, of course, a film on the secret affinities between memory and the unconscious. This issue, affinities between memory and unconscious, this has become rather, let's say, battle today, since psychoanalysis has become for all of us common good. But it was not so common at the time as the film was shot. The traumatic past can only resurface, and the psychic pain of the woman can only be soothed by an exchange of words between the two lovers. And this is what makes the analysis, the return of the memory, possible. This is what makes the lost images come to light. And this is where, of course, the love story coincides with the cure. But, of course, this coincidence can only be transitory and unfinished. For there is always a rest of a psychic wound, and the wounded past, which cannot be healed and cannot surface in words. And this rest, or this remainder, which resists actually its conversion, any kind of conversion into language, into words, that is, which cannot surface in the dialogue between the two lovers. This is what goes in the film through what I call allegory, images, or maybe, if you prefer, concept images in the film. That is, water as a quasi-concept, or light, certain use of light, sounds, music, haunting music. This haunting music you heard in the film. So from the angle of narration of a catastrophe, or a disaster, an event related to extreme violence, this film has the dimension of a manifesto. It is not, it states that it is not movies, cinema's vocation to reconstruct, to represent the disaster, but it is cinema's vocation to work it out, work disaster out in the element of memory as a stake for individual and collective memory, for voluntary and involuntary memory. In the film, in René's film, the event itself, that is the atomic destruction of Hiroshima, is always mentioned, grasped through a memory device or another. That is a narration, the architect narration, the demonstration, the museum, museography, monuments, clips from the film which is Hiroshima. We already talked about this film called Hiroshima. and the actor, the Japanese architect, René found him in the film Hiroshima, etc. As for the scenes, which are in relation with the Nevers event, we can notice that they never are descriptions or reconstruction. They always, in aesthetic terms, they look like as if they spring out of memory, like Rêve. So they always bear the sign of memory. They are subjective pictures, and they have in their tone or in their shade something which is distinctly dreamlike. And for all these reasons, this is also a film on the affinities between cinema, memory, and the unconscious. And we, the audience, we are looking at this film, seeing this film, we are like dreamers with open eyes, facing the impossible memory of an event like Hiroshima, and for this reason, grasping it sideways, that is the negation of an apparently unimportant incident that happened at the end of the war in a small French town. And this is maybe the main lesson of the film. Since we cannot watch Medusa, that is Hiroshima, as a disaster, in the eyes, we'll have to look at it indirectly, as it is reflected in this other apparently unimportant event, which is like its molecular double or reflection. So if we accept this hypothesis, we have to acknowledge that the drama which shook the young woman's existence in August 44, this drama does not divert our attention from Hiroshima, but it takes us back to Hiroshima. So, okay, now the discussion is open.